Thank you. Thank you. I want you to think back. Think back to the most difficult interview you've ever had. Perhaps there was one question that you knew the answer would determine not just whether you would get that job, but your next career path. I had my such moment 20 or so years ago. I went to school in New York, computer science. When I graduated, I took a job doing LAN and desktop support. Towards the end of that role, I got involved in a little process re-engineering. Later took a job with a company that would become IBM Global Services, doing process work full time. And I quickly found out that I did not enjoy process work 100% of the time. Maybe there's some others here who hold that same opinion. But what I did find interesting is what the project manager were doing. So I did, like many of you might, I read up, got as much reading materials as I could, talked to the project managers around me, took education, went to classes, went to seminars and conferences like this one, and I made my desires known amongst my peers. 3 months later, I found myself in the office of the director of project management for an interview. So there I am, brand new to project management, and I want you to picture someone new to project management, or not even having gotten their feet wet just yet. And I'm there in this corner office with this nice view of the woods behind me, dark, heavy furniture. And I'm in there with the director of the project management. And we're talking about project management, my goals, aspirations, all of that. Then she takes off her glasses. She's got these dark brown rimmed glasses. She's holding them and pointing at me with these glasses, almost as if that key question is coming. Be ready for it. She says, "Nick, you're behind schedule." And she's pointing at me like I'm doing to you now. You're behind schedule. You know how to do the work because you've done it before. What do you do? Do you help out? Do you roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty? What do you do? Sounds like a straightforward question, but I promise you it's not. So I had to think about it. And finally, I came up with the courage to say, yes, I would help. But no, I would not roll my sleeves up and get my hands dirty. I would look for additional resources. Or maybe there were tasks later down in the project that we could do in parallel instead of serial. Maybe if I were a project manager, I would use the tools and the processes to look 2, 3, 4 months down the line and avoid the situation entirely. You see, there was this assumption that rolling up your sleeves and helping had to be the same. And they don't always have to be. I did go on to get that role, and that was the key determinant. But what do you think she was after? I boil it down to this. Can you make the transition to leadership? In undergraduate class, I had a Bachelor of Science. Took all computer science, math classes until I had one class in business, the last semester. And it was during that class that the professor had said, you could lead people. You lead people, not technology. And his preface, his declaration, was you could lead anything. Now, at that time, my only experience in the business world was an internship. And what did I see around me? I had a financial manager, so I worked in support of a financial group, and he was a subject matter expert in, guess what? Finance. The manager of my group, he was a subject matter expert in technology. But what I didn't understand is what I was seeing wasn't leaders. Those were managers. We must all make what I call the transition to leadership. Now, I got here from a formal project management path. I started on internal projects, moved to external customer-facing projects, and over the years, they got a little more complex, larger scale, global in nature, moved to program management, portfolio management, but not everyone takes that path. Some of you may have been engineers at one time. Do we have any engineers, people who became project managers from, okay, it's a good percentage. What I say is the skill set that made you excellent as an engineer is not the same skill set that you need to be a leader. Now, you can be a great engineer and a great leader, a great project manager. But the skill set is totally different. What made you great as an individual contributor is not what's going to make you great as a project leader. Some of you may have gotten here because we don't need a project manager. How many of you started off being a participant in the project work and you did project management part-time? Slowly the project work got larger. Your percentage of time doing the work shrank. Maybe the projects got more complex, global, and now you're a project manager. Now, years later, you're doing, quote unquote, project management. I say you have a different challenge. The challenge you have is to recognize the project management profession is out there. It's waiting for you to explore, to understand, and to embrace. Because again, what made you great in your previous role is not what's going to keep you great as a leader. What I say it comes down to is your style. I want you all to look and think about how are you managing your projects, your work today. I call it doing versus directing versus leading. Doing. That's what the hiring manager at IBM was looking to see if I would bite. Doing the work. If when your project is behind schedule and your answer is you're going to roll up your sleeves and do the work, you're doing. What does that limit you to? Well, can you manage anything that you don't know how to do? Can you manage anything where you're not the subject matter expert in that technology, the technology of your project?
Yes.
You can?
Yes.
So when your project is behind schedule and your answer is, I'll roll my sleeves up and do the work, and you don't know how to do the work, that's what I'm talking about. How many think we could do that? Or how many think it scales? Can you manage large programs, projects like that? I think not. Directing. What's directing? It's a little bit better than doing. It's when you're telling people on your team not just what you want from them or what the project needs, but how. This is what I want you to do. This is how I want you to do it. Again, can you manage a project where you don't understand the technology? Can you tell someone how to lay a foundation if you yourself don't know how to do that? What I firmly believe is if you're doing or directing, you're going to be pigeonholed. You're going to stay in your comfort zone of projects that you understand everything. You understand how to do all the work. But what's project management all about? It's about being that subject matter expert in what? In project management. That's what lets you manage different projects. One of the things I always liked is every time I started a new project, it's like having a new job. I found that fun. One day I could be working in security management, implementations, software development, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter that I did not understand how to do the work. I surrounded myself with people who did. So I took over this project. It was probably 25% through, and I'm jumping on a bridge for the first time. So you all know those beeps, beep, beep, Nick here, right? That's how the old bridges used to work 10, 20 years ago. And I get on, and I hear, great, Nick is here, the project manager's here. He can take notes, and we could begin. As if the only value that I brought was a note taker, was a scribe. Now, whose fault is that?
Nick's.
It's Nick's fault. Partially, yes.
Should have been there first.
Partially, yes. I didn't blame that person, that team member. I blame us as a profession. Us as a profession. Why did he think the only thing that I brought to the table? He didn't know me. That's what he had in his mind for project manager. We're note takers. And we as a profession need to change. We need to change that image that people have. It's not their fault that they have that image of us. I want to ask you, how many of you, think back, right, to the last successful project you managed? All those artifacts, meeting minutes, the project plans, the lessons learned, all of that, the risk registers. How many of you went to eBay and were able to sell any of those artifacts? Do you sell any? No. We're in agreement. I've never had anyone raise their hand for that question. But one of the last conferences I spoke at, someone did tell me they work for a company that, guess what? They decided we're going to just do away with project managers. Now, I'm not advocating that, but you have to think about it. Can you run a project without a project manager? I didn't say, is it going to go well? I'm in the wrong meeting if I said it would go well. Yes, you can run a project without a project manager. I don't advocate that. I don't say we should do that, but you can. So my question is, if we produce nothing of value, nothing of hard value, and they could run a project without us, Why do we have a job? Who can tell me why project managers have jobs?
Risk management.
Risk management. Okay. What else?
I think it's more like direction. Many times things don't go as per plan.
Things don't go as planned, right?
Then if you have somebody who can give a direction.
Okay.
There are a lot of, performing people. Sometimes either they're distracted with a lot of work or they're new to the group. So if they see somebody, leading the
Okay.
chart,
There's a phrase for that. Anyone tell me what that is?
captain of the ship over there.
Captain of the ship, yeah. One of the ones.
We bring predictability.
Bring predictability, okay. There you go. Cat herder. There's one other phrase that I just hear at every single conference. There you go, yeah. One throat to choke, cat herder. If I got paid $1 every time I heard those two phrases. But what are those phrases? They're what?
Someone to blame.
Someone to blame. Is it why we have jobs? No. That's what we do. We provide a throat to choke. Great. We take meeting minutes. Great. Why do we have jobs? What's our value add?
Leadership.
You had mentioned risk. That's it right there. I call it leverage for results, though. Folks, the only reason we have jobs is because the statistical probability of project success goes up with a credentialed, certified project manager. That's it. That's the only reason we have jobs. You're more likely to have a successful project with a great project manager than not. Right? Can anyone tell me any other reason why industry just wants us? We don't produce anything. Leverage for results. That's why you're here. So if we're here to enable project success, what's project success? Anyone tell me? What's your vision of project success? How would you define that?
Deliver what the stakeholders want.
Deliver what the stakeholders want.
The purpose of the project is achieved.
Okay?
On time,
There we go. Here's the triple constraints. Time, budget, scope. Or even I'll call it the quad constraint with quality in the middle, right? We're again talking about what we do. I think it's more basic than that. Did the customer receive what they expected? When they expected? Does it get more basic than that? Did they pay what they expected? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not here saying success is when you deliver what the customer expects. And I've got one of my customers in here, and I can still say this. Just as delivery sometimes needs to kick it up a notch and deliver better, sometimes, right, the customer's expectations are also out of whack. Right, Glenn?
I don't know.
You don't know. What I say, it's about managing the gap, the delta. And I've got expectations and not where you are today, the heading. If their expectations are out of whack with what they paid for, it's your job as a project manager to have that conversation with your customer. And don't get me wrong, it's a delicate conversation where the art of project management is going to come into play. You can't just give someone a rule book for having that conversation, but it's critical that the expectations and where your project is going are aligned. And I say expectations and heading. Heading meaning if my project, if we don't change anything, where are we going to end up? Not where we're today, where we will be tomorrow when we close out that project. Did the delivery organization help future business? I did 17 years on the delivery side of the house. The last 4 is in services sales. It's not until now that I truly understand what that one bullet point truly means. When I'm out there selling to a brand new customer, I'm talking to them about how great the delivery organization, how great you guys are. But guess what? When it's my second or third deal that I'm trying to sell to a customer, do you think they want to hear from me? Do you think they care what I have to say about my delivery team? They already know. Step aside, Mr. Salesman. We can see from past performance what we're getting. You, everyone in this room, you need to stop thinking of yourselves as just delivery. You're salespeople. You're salespeople for that future job, that future deal that you may not even know about, that may not have even been positioned. Because if you perform and you perform well, that sale to that repeat customer goes so much smoother. We don't have to sell on the value that you bring. It's already apparent. Destination and the journey. It's not just about finishing your project on time, on budget, with the quality. It's about that journey. And I say success can boil down to one question. Do both parties want to do business again? Could you have any customers where you would say we were successful that couldn't answer yes to that? Do both parties, not just the customer, delivery org and the customer, do they want to work together again? That's success. So I worked for a large equipment manufacturer. And they sold this large deal to a service provider. And in that, they bundled some services. The customer came to our organization and said, great, we'll buy the services from you, but you're going to use this partner over here, put it on your paper, and we don't want to talk to you. Picture that as your first project. Here I am. I was assigned the project manager. And of course, what was the project? It was what? High what? Visibility. High visibility, urgent, everyone's what? You know, all that typical jargon, right? For the first 3 weeks, I'm on team calls, my project team calls, where I'm not even allowed to talk to the customer. 3 weeks. My partner is leading the team meetings because the customer is more comfortable with this partner of ours. Then it was late Friday night. Get an email from the customer. And this was before the days when email went to your cell phones. And as some of you might tend to check your personal email and then your business email or back and forth. So I did that Friday night. I was waiting for some personal email. And I see this note. It's from Victor, the guy who, for 3 weeks, wouldn't talk to me. It appears we were changing fiscal calendars, fiscal years, and he needed to recognize some cost this year versus next. And he was stuck. Poor Victor was stuck. So I quickly email him back. I say, Victor, I can solve your problem. You have to talk to me, though. And I kid you not, I did say that. I said, here's my number, call me. 5 minutes later, Friday night, I'm on the line with Victor, guy who would not talk to me for the first 3 weeks of this project. I said, Victor, I'll just shift some of the milestones around. I'll have the CR taken care of. You'll get the paperwork Monday, just sign it. No big deal. Problem solved. I said, Victor, solve that problem for you? I can solve other problems as well. That moment, our whole relationship changed. Whole relationship changed. Be ready for what I call a hidden moment of truth. It's a moment when you're in front of the customer and you may not realize that that little thing you're doing or maybe not doing, how big of an impression that is truly making. I didn't do anything magical. I just picked up the phone, I was myself, but I was there for him. And I truly believe that he saw that no matter how he had treated me, I was there, I picked up the phone, it was a Friday night, I didn't want to be on the phone working on a Friday night. He solved his problem, he came first. Check your ego at the door, guys. That's your customer. Put them first. I asked you before, why do we have jobs? Well, if we don't have customers and there's no projects, guess what there's no need for? Us. How many of you have been unhappy maybe with a restaurant or some kind of maybe a grocery store, something that you didn't like the way you were treated? Lots of you, right? Did you complain? Did you fill out a questionnaire? Sometimes. Did everyone fill out one? No. Surveys, questionnaires, those are all great, right? But guess what? The customer's not happy with you, Aziz. He's just not going to come back. Some customers knock only once. You don't get a second chance. So when you're in front of the customer, picture you're on stage. That's your customer. There's not going to be a quality survey. They're not going to come back and say, you should have been more attentive to my needs. You should have been more flexible. They just don't come back. If you're doing work internally, that department, they just don't want to work with you. It happens, guys. Some customers only knock once. So I'm from New York, right? You can probably tell by my slight accent. And everyone in my family, we're all from different parts of the country and even the world. My wife, she's from Brazil, from a little tiny town off the Madeiras River in the Amazon. My oldest son, Sean, he was born in Danbury, Connecticut. My middle son, Andrew, He was born in Miami. Remember Miami? And my daughter, Adriana, she was born in northern Florida, in Jacksonville. It became kind of the joke that depending upon where you were born, determined whether you were hot or cold-blooded. So one year, we're planning a trip. We're going to go see our relatives in Ohio, a winter trip where it's going to be cold. A couple weeks before, I'm taking my two boys to the supermarket. They were maybe 4 and 5 years old at the time. And I can hear them talking in the back. And I hear Andrew saying to Sean, he says, Sean, I'm going to be cold in Ohio. I'm going to be cold. You don't understand. I'm going to be cold there because I was born in Dad's Ammy. I kid you not. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I was born in Dad's Ammy. I had to stop the car. I said, what? You were what? He says, yeah, Dad. I was born in your Ammy. I'm going to be cold in Ohio. I said, oh. If my son can confuse Miami, as if I have an Ammy, and Miami, can't just about anything be miscommunicated, misinterpreted, confused? And as our projects are becoming more global, more complex, as teams have more and more of a specialty, right? To build a house, it's not just one person working on a house for 6 months. You might have 20, 30, 40 specialties. Each one of those specialties is what? They're a handoff. They're an interface. What you believe you're producing needs to be the same as what he believes he's receiving from you. You think that goes well all the time? Think Miami. Anything can be miscommunicated. Interfaces, handoffs, communications, those are critical that we watch and pay attention, especially as we go international, right? Handoffs. On a trip to Brazil, we're in the Amazon, and for whatever reason, we were in the jungle. And my wife hands to me a cashew fruit. And I like trying exotic food, exotic fruits, and I also like cashew nuts. So I say, great, let me have it. So I bite into that cashew fruit, and it's unbelievable. Like nothing you've ever tasted. I can't compare it to any American fruit, nothing that I've had back here in the States. So I finished that fruit, and then I said, great, now's my opportunity to try the cashew nut. So the top is where the nut is. I bite into the cashew nut, and instead of getting a nut, out comes a white, creamy, highly toxic fluid. Almost immediately, it numbs my lip, my tongue, my throat. For 2 or 3 days, I'm dealing with these burns from that little thing, that cashew nut. My wife said, here, try this. She didn't say, don't try that. When you define your scope, it's just as important to define what is in scope and what is not. It's just as important to tell your customer what your responsibilities are and what their responsibilities are. And those, again, are the difficult conversations that all of you, if you want to be project leaders, not managers, leaders, you have to be able to have. You need to be able to have that conversation with your customer and walk away with your relationship intact. You will be providing this. Are we clear? Is that what you're expecting to do? And maybe they're not. And you'll talk it through. But you must reach agreement on what is in scope and what is not. Positive agreement is easy. It's always easy to agree what you're going to do, what's in scope, what's my responsibility. Don't take the absence of no for yes. Don't ever assume the absence of no means agreement. If it's that critical that you reach agreement, get a yes. Explore. Be like Lieutenant Colombo, Detective Colombo. You guys remember him? He had what? What did Detective Colombo always have? One more question. How many of you have been talking to someone on your project and you say, help me out here. I just don't get this. Walk me through this. Maybe you understood, maybe you didn't. But the very act of getting your team to walk you through will do wonders for your project. Ask those questions. Be inquisitive. Don't assume anything. What I see a lot out there are what I call status reporters. I'm red, yellow, or green. Maybe last week I was red. I always like asking them, well, if you were yellow last week and you're red this week, what happened? Did you put anything in place to stop it from getting worse? Or if you were green last week and red this, did some act of nature just catch up with your project? How'd you go from green to red immediately? Now the status reporters also, they tend to do what after they've said we're red, yellow, green? What do? They walk away, right? You're red, here you go. And then they see, they just walk away. That's why the scribe is here. Now we can begin. From the status reporters. You want to be what I call a psychic plus. Psychic predicts the future, supposedly, right? I say we take it the next step. Predict and fix the future. Use the tools to look 2, 3, 4 months down the line and solve those problems before the customer even knew they existed. That's where your value comes in. Now, there is some irony. I was managing a project. Things are going really well. About halfway through hitting our numbers and milestones, the customer's happy. And I got a call from my manager. I said, hey, Nick, how are you doing? Great, great. We started chit-chatting a little bit. And finally, he got to it. He says, Nick, yeah, I hear everything is going awesome. I need something from you. I need to steal some cycles. You guys ever heard that? Steal some cycles. Did he just make a leap of faith there? My project is going well. Assumption, I've got what? Free time. I've got cycles to steal. Guys, it was almost as if he envisioned this magical pixie dust wielding fairy putting my project into place. What I say is, consider that a compliment. Outside of project management, project managers, when you're doing your job so well, people are going to wonder what you're doing all day. Your project is going smooth. Are you busy? What else could we give you? The irony is, the reward for doing your job really well is more work. I say you're like that swan. Right? On the surface, the swan looks like they're gliding across the water with little to no effort. Isn't that us? Do a good job, you look like the swan. Now underneath the water, that swan may be paddling like crazy. And you should be, but in a proactive manner, solving problems before they even hit the customer. You're going to look like that swan, and it will be a compliment. But folks, it is the thankless job, because most of the industry will wonder why you're around. Do a good job, people wonder what they need you for. I want you to think back to the last successful project that you had. Maybe you're doing lessons learned, right? Has anyone had the situation where during that lessons learned, someone has raised their hand and just said, you know, the project was a huge success, and I just don't know what we did to get us here? Any of you have that experience where people wonder what it was we did as a team to get here? I've never had that. When we were successful, we as a team knew what we did to get there. Folks, success is not by accident. You need to plan that into your projects. The new project manager, the new modern project manager, they can manage anything. That's where being a subject matter expert in project management comes to play. They work with an architect. They're your right-hand man, right-man person, filling in the gaps, bouncing questions you have off them. They're indispensable. But you need to start thinking of your projects as your own little business. Think of your projects as your little baby, your business. Speak the language of business. Options, options, and more options. When you go to your customer, don't go to them with data. Go to them with options. This is a choice. This one has these pros, these cons. You could also look at this. Here's another option. And don't just go with options. Put some thought into it. What's your recommendation? What would you do if you were me? Your customer appreciates that. Do you appreciate getting options, Glenn? Absolutely. Some may do what I call diary of the mouth. Have you ever spoken to someone, you ask them a question, and they just start rambling on and on and on, and your head is spinning, going up in 10 different directions? And at the end, what do? What do you ask them after they're done? If they're ever done?
Any questions?
You ask them the same question again. So which way should we go? Should we go left or right? Well, it's colder this way, that way's wet, and there's a pothole, and that street's closed, and left or right? And why? Avoid diarrhea of the mouth. Avoid passing the monkey. Avoid passing the monkey. Left, it's cold. Right, it's hilly. There's a stream that way. There you go. And I leave. Whose problem is it now to solve? Now it's yours. Now it's yours. Do you think management, customers appreciate that? Do you think we're being leaders? Do we wonder why? Nick's here, he could take notes. Let's begin. We can't do this. It's your company. It's your project. That's your baby. Run it like it's one. Go in there. Management, customer, this is what I think we should do. Here's the choices I've looked at. Of course, it's their choice in the end, but empower them. Make their lives easy. Avoid passing the monkey. So SpongeBob and Patrick are going for a walk in Bikini Bottoms. And yes, I have kids, so that's why I know that SpongeBob lives in Bikini Bottoms. Going for a walk. And off in the distance, they spot a bear. That bear starts running at them. So SpongeBob goes up to a log and he starts to tie his shoes, make them really tight. Patrick looks down at him and starts laughing. Says, "Oh, buddy, old pal, what are you doing? Do you really think by tying your shoes tight, you're going to be able to outrun the bear?" And he says, "Patrick, my buddy, I don't need to outrun the bear. I need to outrun you." Folks, if the goals of your project aren't in alignment with your team's goals, I'm talking about their personal career goals, how is that project not only valuable for your company, but for them as a person, as their career? If you don't take the time to show them how those two are connected, and they are connected, at the first sign of trouble, your team, you're going to be tying their shoes and running for the door. You have to understand what I call the WIFM. What's in it for me? And not your WIFM, their WIFM. Why does a successful project of yours matter to them? And if you're sitting there right now thinking about your current projects and you're coming up dry, empty, think about the performance improvement you could probably get if they connected success of your project with their personal career success. You have to connect them. If you don't, do you have a team? I say you don't. I say you got a group of SpongeBobs. That's what you have. Sorry, it's only business. How many have heard that saying? It's only business. Anyone here ever have trouble, issues, challenges, dissatisfaction maybe with your insurance provider or a cable TV provider? Some service where you didn't have that personal connection with the person on the other line, on the other side of the phone. You didn't know them personally. Think back to how easy it is, or easy it was, for your frustration levels to build. I worked for all these companies on the left. And I promise you, I was never known as the GDT project manager or the Cisco Systems project manager. I made it my job to become Nick, the project manager. Make it personal. Get to know your customer. It's not just about business. When you go out for dinner, don't just talk about your projects. Get to know them. I'm Nick, I have 3 kids. One of my kids is in youth soccer, one's in baseball. Oh yeah, me too. I got a daughter that is the same age as your daughter. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is the solution to all your project woes. But do you think when things go sour that I just bought myself a little bit more time. I bought myself a little bit time to maybe solve the problem that would have been escalated much quicker if I were just the Cisco project manager. Get to know your customers. And here I say, get to like your customers. I don't think you have to be friends with all your customers, but you have to like them. And here's what I'll say. If you can't ever see yourself liking your customer, get a new customer. Because I promise you, you won't support them the way they need. Get a new customer. So I'm working at home one day, and all of a sudden I hear da-da-da! Da-da-da! Like, what the hell's going on? I get up, open my office door, walk outside the house, go around, take a look up on the roof, and I see this cute little adorable squirrel. I mean, not this one, but it was a squirrel gnawing on the vent pipe going to the bathroom right next to my office. This little thing. Go back inside. Nowadays, of course, did a little search on the internet, and what I discovered is that squirrels like the sweet lead taste in pipes. Go figure. That squirrel will gnaw and gnaw and gnaw, and once they find those pipes, they don't ever leave them alone. Eventually, they gnaw them so much that their teeth get rounded. They can't bite into nuts or forage for food, and eventually they starve to death. They starve to death from doing the same thing day in and day out. Project management leadership is not about that prettiest project plan. It's not about all those cute dashboards that you could produce with all the nice colors. It's about consistent results. Consistent results. Consider this a call to change. I don't want to have to hear the scribes here, let's begin. I know we're more valuable than that. But we all must make the transition to leadership. That's what's missing. That's what people don't always see. Folks, to be told the scribe is here, let's begin. They're not seeing us as leaders. We need to change that. I say, why not try something new tomorrow? Not why you're here, to learn, try something new. If you go back tomorrow to your jobs and you try 1, 2, 3 things, anything new, consider that a success for this conference. Make it your duty to just do something different, a conscious effort tomorrow to do something new. Thank you, everyone.